The community clubhouse had never been so packed. Residents who had never attended an HOA meeting in their lives crowded into the room, spilling out into the hallway. As Melissa entered, the buzz of conversation died, replaced by a heavy silence, and 24 pairs of eyes tracking her movement. She'd spent hours preparing for this moment, selecting a conservative navy dress that projected authority while choosing subtle makeup to appear more approachable. She'd rehearsed her statement, practicing the perfect blend of mild contrition and firm leadership. This was simply a PR challenge, she told herself, nothing she couldn't handle. The emergency board meeting began with Stanley Weber calling for order. Melissa took her usual seat at the head of the table, arranging her notepads and pens in precise alignment. As this is an irregular session, Stanley began, we'll dispense with standard protocols and move directly to the matter at hand. Yesterday's incident involving our board president and the resulting property damage to the Johnson residence has created significant liability concerns. I know. She glanced back at the community center. But maybe I can start by helping with the native plant garden. I have some experience with landscaping. Trevor nodded. Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Bring gloves and prepare to get dirty. 2 weeks later, the vote of no confidence passed overwhelmingly, officially ending Melissa's presidency. She attended the meeting where Carlos was elected the new president, with Elaine as vice president. Rather than feeling devastated, she felt strange relief as the weight of control lifted from her shoulders. The following month found her kneeling in soil beside neighborhood children, teaching them how to identify native species in the new community garden, a project that would never have survived her previous approval process. Ms. Hartman called 8-year-old Lily Chen, "Is this weed or flower?" "Good question," Melissa replied, examining the sprout. "Sometimes it's hard to tell at first. We need to give it time to reveal itself." As she helped the child mark the mystery plant with a small sign reading "Watch Me Grow," Melissa noticed her BMW in the community center parking lot. The windows had been replaced, but she'd left the scratches on the door, a reminder of consequences of transformation, of the difference between enforcing community and building one. In her pocket, her phone buzzed with a reminder about tomorrow's cultural potluck, where she promised to bring her grandmother's rarely shared apple strudel recipe. Her contribution to a new tradition in a neighborhood slowly learning to see her as simply Melissa, not HOA Karen. The journey wasn't over. Some neighbors still avoided her, trust forming more slowly than garden sprouts. The Johnson house reconstruction continued, a daily reminder of past mistakes. And sometimes, Melissa still caught herself mentally citing violations before remembering that wasn't her role anymore. But as she helped Lily pat soil around another seedling, she felt something unfamiliar taking root within herself as well. Something that might, with proper care and patience, eventually bloom. By 8:17 the next morning, Melissa Hartman's hydrant standoff had gone viral. Her neighbor Trevor, a quiet software engineer she'd once fined for having wind chimes that exceeded the community's ambient noise restrictions, had captured the entire confrontation on his phone. The video, complete with her threats, and the moment she realized her luxury car was being sacrificed for the greater good, had amassed 1.2 million views overnight. Melissa discovered this unfortunate development while sipping her morning coffee and scrolling through her notifications. Her phone had been unusually active, 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, and an explosion of social media alerts. When she opened the first link, her coffee joined yesterday's latte on the floor. No, she whispered, watching herself in high definition, screaming at firefighters while a family's home burned in the background. The comments beneath the video were merciless. HOA Karen gets what she deserves. Imagine caring more about your BMW than someone's burning house. I want to send those firefighters a gift basket. Worse still, the local news had picked up the story. HOA president blocks hydrant, throws tantrum when firefighters respond, read the headline. They'd even included quotes from her neighbors, people she saw every day, people who were supposed to respect her. Her phone rang again. This time it was Stanley Weber, the property management company liaison who worked with the HOA board. "Melissa," he began without preamble, "we need to talk about yesterday's incident." It's being blown completely out of proportion, she snapped, pacing her immaculate kitchen. Those firefighters could have asked me to move my car. There was no need for property damage. The fire department doesn't have time to track down vehicle owners during an emergency, as I'm sure you understand. Stanley replied, his voice carefully neutral. But that's not why I'm calling. The board has called an emergency meeting for this evening. Melissa froze. I'm the president. I call the meetings. Not this time. The bylaws allow for emergency sessions when called by a majority. I'll see you at the clubhouse at 7. The line went dead, leaving Melissa staring at her phone in disbelief. For the first time in 5 years, she was being summoned rather than doing the summoning. She needed to leave the house, to clear her head and formulate a strategy, but the prospect of facing her neighbors terrified her. Melissa Hartman, who had once conducted surprise inspections of backyard fence heights with a tape measure and citation book, was afraid to step onto her own driveway. A knock at the door made her jump. Peering through the peephole, she saw Mrs. Johnson, the woman whose house had caught fire, standing on her welcome mat. Melissa considered pretending she wasn't home, but the woman had already spotted movement through the sidelight window. Taking a deep breath, Melissa opened the door just enough to show her face. "What do you want?" she asked, trying to maintain her usual authoritative tone. Elaine Johnson looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, clothes smelling faintly of smoke. "I wanted to talk to you, neighbor to neighbor. If this is about the fire, I had nothing to do with it," Melissa said defensively. "No, but you had something to do with how quickly they could put it out," Elaine replied evenly. "The firefighters told us that the delay in connecting to that hydrant meant the damage spread to our daughter's bedroom. Her things are gone, Melissa. Her stuffed animals, the quilt my mother made her, everything." Something heavy settled in Melissa's stomach. She'd never considered herself cruel. Strict, yes. Unbending, certainly. But not cruel. Yet looking at Elaine's face, she couldn't escape the consequences of her actions. "The HOA has guidelines about parking," she began weakly. "Guidelines you break when it's convenient for you," Elaine interrupted. "We've all seen you park wherever you want when you're doing your inspections. Rules for thee but not for me, right?" Melissa bristled. "I enforce those rules to maintain our property values. Everything I do is for this community. Is it? Or is it for the power?" Elaine shook her head sadly. "Just thought you should know. We're staying with my sister. The fire inspector said if they had immediate access to that hydrant, we might still be in our home." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and I'm running for HOA president at the next election. Thought you should hear it from me first." As Elaine walked away, Melissa closed the door and leaned against it, heart pounding. She'd never had a challenger before. No one had dared. Her phone buzzed with another notification. Someone had started a GoFundMe for the Johnson family. It had already raised $15,000, and the description mentioned delays caused by an improperly parked vehicle belonging to the HOA president. Tuesday evening arrived with Melissa sitting in her car outside the community center, watching residents stream inside for the community reset meeting. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles whitened. She hadn't attended a neighborhood event as just a resident, a civilian, in years. "You can do this," she whispered to herself. "Just listen. Don't correct. Don't cite regulations." The room fell silent as she entered, then burst into uncomfortable whispers. Carlos spotted her from the front and gave a surprised but encouraging nod. She slipped into a chair in the back row, feeling oddly exposed without her clipboard and authority. "Welcome, everyone," Carlos began. "Tonight isn't about complaints or rules. It's about what we want Oak Ridge to become." What followed amazed Melissa. Neighbors she'd labeled troublemakers offered thoughtful suggestions about community gardens and children's play areas. People she'd dismissed as apathetic proposed environmental initiatives and neighborhood watch programs. The Chens, notorious lemonade stand operators, suggested monthly cultural potlucks to celebrate the neighborhood's diversity. Not a single person mentioned property values, yet everything they proposed would undoubtedly make Oak Ridge more desirable. When the meeting broke into small discussion groups, Melissa found herself isolated until Elaine Johnson, of all people, sat beside her. "Didn't expect to see you here," Elaine said quietly. Melissa swallowed hard. "I'm trying to understand." "What's there to understand? People want to live in a community, not just valuable real estate. But standards matter," Melissa insisted, though less forcefully than before. "Structure matters." "Yes," Elaine agreed unexpectedly. "But so does flexibility. So does kindness." Their conversation was interrupted by Carlos, calling the room back to order for closing remarks. "Before we end tonight, does anyone else have thoughts to share?" Silence fell. Then, to her own astonishment, Melissa raised her hand. Carlos blinked in surprise. "Melissa, the floor is yours." She stood, feeling every eye in the room. Her prepared mental speech about maintaining standards evaporated as she looked at her neighbors' faces. Not anonymous rule breakers, but people with stories she'd never bothered to learn. "I've been wrong," she said simply, the words physically painful to speak. "Not about wanting Oak Ridge to be excellent. I still believe in that. But about how to achieve it." The room remained silent, collectively holding its breath. "I thought excellence came from control and uniformity." But looking at what happened with the fire hydrant, she paused, forcing herself to say it. "Looking at how I blocked access that could have saved the Johnsons' home, I've had to face that my approach caused harm." She turned to Elaine. "I am truly sorry, not just for the hydrant, but for every time I valued rules over people." Someone in the back began to clap slowly, followed by scattered, uncertain applause. "I don't expect forgiveness," Melissa continued, "and I won't contest the vote of no confidence. But if you'll allow it, I'd like to stay involved, not as a leader, but as a learner. I have organizational skills that could help with these new initiatives, if you'll have me." The tension in the room shifted subtly. Not quite acceptance, but no longer pure hostility. After the meeting, Trevor approached her in the parking lot. "That couldn't have been easy." "Hardest thing I've ever done," Melissa admitted. "People won't forget overnight," he warned. "Trust takes time to rebuild." Melissa's first week of suspension felt like exile. She watched from her living room window as Carlos Garcia walked the neighborhood, stopping to chat with residents, kneeling to admire children's chalk drawings on driveways that she would have cited as unapproved surface alterations. No clipboard, no camera documenting violations, just conversation and the occasional hearty laugh. It was wrong, all wrong. Without proper enforcement, the community would slide into mediocrity. Property values would plummet. Standards would erode. Someone needed to document these lapses. She found herself taking notes obsessively. The Wildest family installed a small vegetable garden without submitting landscape plans. The Patels painted their front door a shade of blue that appeared suspiciously unvetted. The Chen children set up a lemonade stand, again, without a proper permit. Yet no one seemed concerned. Worse, neighbors who had previously averted their eyes when she passed now gathered in small clusters, chatting animatedly. Were they discussing her, planning her permanent removal? On Thursday, unable to bear the isolation any longer, Melissa walked to the community mailboxes, timing her trip when she knew they'd be busiest. The conversation died as she approached. Barbara from 2 doors down, hydrangea offender, gave her a curt nod before turning away. "Beautiful day," Melissa offered awkwardly. Someone murmured noncommittally. She tried again. "I see the community center is getting new landscaping." "Carlos approved it yesterday," Barbara replied. "The teenagers designed it as a service project. They're putting in native plants that need less water. A project approved in a single day. Impossible. The landscaping committee required 3 separate reviews and a minimum 30-day consideration period." "That seems hasty," Melissa ventured. "Efficient, you mean," corrected Mr. Abernathy, whom she'd once fined for leaving his garage door open during a family emergency. "Turns out when you're not looking for reasons to say no, things get done." The group dispersed, leaving Melissa alone with her mail, including an official notice of the upcoming vote of no confidence. 2 weeks away. Her future would be decided by the very people who couldn't be trusted to select appropriate mailbox finials without guidance. That evening, A knock at her door revealed Trevor, camera phone documentarian of her downfall. "What do you want?" she asked warily. "To film more humiliating content." Trevor shifted uncomfortably. "Actually, I came to apologize. I never expected the video to go that viral. The internet pile-on got out of hand." His unexpected contrition disarmed her. "Oh." But he continued, "I'm not sorry people finally saw what we've been dealing with. You've made this neighborhood miserable, Melissa." She stiffened. "I've made it excellent. Prime real estate. Better than any community around." "You've made it a prison," Trevor countered. "Do you know why I installed wind chimes? My mother loved them. When she died last year, I put them up to remember her. You cited me the next day." Melissa had no memory of this. Just another violation among hundreds. "The rules explicitly state." The rules, Trevor interrupted. "Carlos looked at the actual HOA charter yesterday. Did you know it was founded to create a friendly, supportive neighborhood that maintains quality while encouraging community spirit? Nowhere does it mention making people dread checking their front door for violation notices. Community spirit doesn't maintain property values," Melissa insisted. "Neither does being universally hated," Trevor replied bluntly. "Look, I didn't come to argue. The vote's happening no matter what. But Carlos suggested something you might consider." He handed her a flyer. "Community Reset Initiative, Rebuilding Oak Ridge Together." "What is this?" "A chance," Trevor said simply. "Carlos is inviting everyone to reimagine our HOA from the ground up, focusing on support rather than punishment, collaboration instead of control. Even you, if you're willing to listen more than you dictate." After he left, Melissa sank onto her sofa, studying the flyer. A meeting next Tuesday, a fresh start. Her first instinct was to dismiss it, naive idealism that would ruin everything she'd built. Yet a persistent thought nagged at her. If she was so essential to Oak Ridge's success, why did everyone seem happier in her absence? That night, unable to sleep, Melissa drove past the Johnson house. Reconstruction had begun, the damaged section covered in tarps. A sign in the yard read, "Thank you, Oak Ridge neighbors, for your support." Support she hadn't offered. Rules she'd enforced that no one wanted. Power she'd hoarded that had ultimately left her powerless. For the first time since taking office, Melissa Hartman wondered if she'd been wrong all along. The piercing sound of glass shattering echoed through Oak Ridge Estates as Melissa Hartman, known throughout the neighborhood as HOA Karen, dropped her grande sugar-free vanilla latte onto the pristine sidewalk. Her jaw hung open in a perfect O of horror as she watched two burly firefighters systematically destroy her BMW's windows with their axes. Water from the hydrant her car had been blocking now gushed through a massive hose, snaking between her vehicle's tires and across the manicured lawn she'd cited 3 neighbors for last week. "What are you doing?" she shrieked, her voice reaching a pitch that made neighborhood dogs howl in response. "Do you have any idea who I am?" The older firefighter barely glanced her way. "Ma'am, you're blocking a hydrant during an active fire. Please step back." Indeed, smoke billowed from the Johnson residence 3 doors down, the same home whose Christmas decorations Melissa had demanded be removed in February, citing HOA bylaws she'd personally amended. The irony was lost on her as she stormed toward the fire crew, designer heels sinking into the wet grass. "I am the president of the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association. This car costs more than your annual salary." Her finger jabbed the air inches from the firefighter's face. "I was only going to be a minute. I have a meeting." Captain Rodriguez had dealt with entitled residents before, but something about this woman's complete disregard for her neighbor's burning home struck a nerve. "Ma'am, people's lives are at stake. Back away or I'll have you removed from the scene." Melissa's face contorted through several shades of red. As president of the HOA for 5 consecutive years, she wasn't accustomed to being challenged. Her authority in Oak Ridge was absolute, from the approved shade of beige for exterior paint to the maximum height of garden gnomes, strictly prohibited unless applying for a special variance, which she'd denied 17 times. "I want your badge number. I want all your names," she demanded, whipping out her phone to record the scene. Behind her, A gathering crowd of neighbors watched with undisguised glee. For years, they'd endured Melissa's tyrannical rule, her clipboard inspections, her passive-aggressive notes, her $200 fines for garbage bins left out 4 minutes past collection time. Now, karma had arrived in a big red truck with sirens blaring. "That's Melissa Hartman's car," whispered Barbara from 2 doors down. "She gave me a violation for my hydrangeas being 2 inches taller than regulation last summer. She made my daughter cry when she shut down her lemonade stand," added another neighbor. "Said it violated commercial operation restrictions." Melissa spun around, suddenly aware of her audience. These people were supposed to fear her, not smirk as firefighters destroyed her property. She'd built her reputation on meticulous enforcement of rules. Her rules. The neighborhood was perfect because of her vigilance. Didn't they understand that? As the water pressure increased, the hose stiffened, scratching her car's custom paint job. Melissa felt something unfamiliar rising within her, a sensation she hadn't experienced since taking over the HOA: powerlessness. The Johnson family huddled together across the street, watching firefighters battle the blaze consuming their second floor. Mrs. Johnson clutched her crying daughter while Mr. Johnson held their trembling dog. It was the same family Melissa had threatened with legal action last month for installing a basketball hoop without proper approval. For a fleeting moment, something resembling shame flickered across Melissa's consciousness, but it was quickly extinguished by indignation. This wasn't her fault. She had important HOA business to attend to. These people simply didn't understand the pressure she was under maintaining property values. "I'll sue the entire department," she announced to no one in particular as she backed away, already mentally drafting the first of many strongly worded emails that would surely fix this injustice. Little did Melissa know, this hydrant incident was just the beginning of her downfall, and perhaps, if she could recognize it, the start of her redemption.